Do not open the door. 7 sinister secrets revealed that will haunt you forever. Emma stumbled down the familiar street of Maplewood, legs weary from her late shift at the diner. A veil of shadows draped across the night, while porch lights flickered like distant stars fading into the abyss. The wing whispered secrets of the neighborhood, secrets Emma longed to ignore. She just wanted to find solace in the arms of her son, Liam, whose vivid imagination painted their world with wild adventures. But tonight felt different. Liam's voice was taut with fear, urgency clawing at her insides. "Mom, there's someone watching us from the house next door." His eyes, wide and terrified, darted to the peeling paint and overgrown hedges of the home they rarely discussed. Emma chuckled lightly, dismissing his fears as childhood fantasies. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her mind. She went straight to the kitchen and poured cups of cocoa, hoping the warm sweetness would quench his fears. Yet, as the night crawled on, unease settled deeper inside her. Unsettling noises echoed through their snug home, a rhythmic tapping at the window that sent chills straight down her spine. She held her breath, heart pounding. The tapping continued, persistent and unnerving. "Maybe it's just the branches, sweetie," she offered weakly, but her own words felt false against the deepening unease of the night. Misplaced keys and unexplained drafts began to plague their days. And every time Liam picked up his art supplies, he conjured drawings of ghastly figures lurking just behind closed doors. "It's just your imagination, buddy," she reassured him, rolling her eyes. But each shadow grew arms, reaching out with sinister intent, gnawing away at her disbelief. And every time she glanced at the neighbor's house, the chill in the air thickened, wrapping around her like a vice. Soon whispers floated through Maplewood, dark rumors that tangled with ordinary pleasantries. The strange family next door, who never stepped outside until the sun kissed the horizon, seemed to harbor something unspeakable. Faces that once smiled morphed into something unsettling, and even the beloved mailman's cheerful visits began to feel heavy, like he was testing the waters. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The weight of dread settled firmly on her shoulders. Every creak of the house and flicker of a light pulled at her unraveling courage. The tapping fed into her growing terror, transforming from a mere intrusion to a sentient reminder that danger lurked outside. Liam's voice echoed, calling from the shadows in the dark. "Mom, let them in!" As silence enveloped the house, her heart raced like a wild animal. Gripping the door handle, she couldn't shake the feeling that what waited outside could unravel everything she held dear: her home, her boy, their fragile existence. With trepidation and mounting dread, Emma contemplated the decision that would change everything. What lay on the other side of that door? And could she brave the darkness that threatened to spill into their sanctuary? Emma's fingers trembled around the cold metallic doorknob. The air turned heavy, suffocating her with anticipation. Liam's whisper echoed in her mind, a siren's call tugging at her resolve. Let them in. She felt the room shrink, closing in like a vice. The night outside seeped through the cracks of the door, curling around her ankles, filling the space with a chilling dread. Common sense screamed at her to turn back, to escape the unknown. But the fear in Liam's voice gnawed at her. "Mom, please." He was scared, she could hear it. Slowly, she twisted the knob, pulling the door inward with a hesitant creak. The darkness beyond loomed, swallowing the light from inside their home. Shadows danced just out of reach, shapes shifting silently, as if communicating in a language only they could understand. "Hello?" Emma's voice wavered, but rang through the stillness like a plea. A deep chill swept across her skin, wrapping her in a blanket of terror. No response, just the chilling rustle of the wind. She hesitated, her heart slamming against her ribcage. Heedless whispers flickered through her mind, memories of ominous tales that floated through Maplewood, shrouded in mystery. Yet she pushed the fear aside. This was her son, her responsibility. "Liam, wait here," she urged, her resolve strengthening. She stepped outside, cautiously navigating the pitch-black shadows that wrapped the neighbor's home. She peered into the small, cracked window, heart racing with each beat. Darkness sang a lullaby of unease, and she squinted, searching for any sign of life. And there it was, a faint flicker of light in the distance, flickering like dying embers. Was it a candle, or something more sinister? "Mom, come back!" Liam's voice shattered the silence behind her, pulling her from the grip of darkness. "Just a minute," she called back. Her instincts pricked at her skin like tiny needles, pushing her to retreat. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something awaited her, something crucial to understanding the fear that plagued them both. Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the other side, jagged and heavy. She spun around, heart lurching. A figure loomed within the shadows, face obscured beneath a hood. It was the shape of someone familiar, someone she'd known all her life. "Emma, we need to talk." The voice was murky, cloaked in darkness. Her heart sank, recognition clawing at her throat. "Who are you?" she demanded, though it sounded weak even to her. "It's about the house, about Liam, about the things that watch." The figure stepped closer, the flickering light casting a ghastly glow that twisted their features. Emma stumbled back instinctively. There was something wrong, something profoundly unsettling in their gaze that sent a shudder racing down her spine. Just then, Liam's unsteady steps echoed from behind her. "Mom? Liam, stay inside!" But it was too late. The figure was already upon them, shadows coiling around their feet like tendrils. Emma could feel cold dread seep into her bones, the desperation of a mother's protective instinct igniting within her. The figure leaned in closer, breath hot and stale, filling the air with its putrid stench. "You can't protect him from what's waiting." Before she could make sense of the warning, a deafening crash echoed across the night, an explosion of sound piercing through their fragile bubble of fear. The rows of clouds above them erupted, frantic flashes of lightning illuminating the hellish scene. The very ground seemed to tremble, twisting like a living thing beneath her feet. Emma's blood ran cold as realization washed over her. Whatever lingered in the dark had finally come home. And without a moment's hesitation, she swept Liam into her arms. But the shadow already whispered a final warning. The door will open again. In the darkness, Emma's eyes darted toward the house next door, where the windows glowed with a sinister red. Within that suffocating silence, she wondered if perhaps they were destined to face whatever was behind that door, together. And suddenly, the door swung wide, a grin stretching across the night. "Welcome home, Emma." Emma stumbled backward, clutching Liam to her chest. The familiar figure was swallowed by shadow, but its voice clung to her ears, reverberating like a funeral dirge. "We can't stay here." But where could they go? The crimson glow from the neighboring house pulsed with an unsettling heartbeat, drawing her gaze like a moth towards a flame. Fear tightened around her throat. The longer they stood there, the more the shadows crept closer, crawling up their legs, whispering promises of despair. "Mom, I'm scared," Liam cried, burying his face against her shoulder. Emma's heart ached at his tremor. "I know, sweetheart. We just need to get inside." She pushed against the weight of the air, dragging Liam back towards the door. But it loomed larger now, ominous and threatening, like a portal to an unseen nightmare. She took a breath, trying to anchor herself. On the count of 3, we go in. 1, 2. The wind howled, cold and biting, catching her breath as she faltered. 3. They bolted inside, slamming the door shut behind them. The hallway felt alive, closing in, and the breath of the outside world slipped beneath the cracks, whispering a warning. "Did you see that?" Liam gasped, glancing back toward the door. "See what?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice steady even as the tremors returned. "The red light! It was looking at us!" Before she could respond, a shudder echoed through the house, reverberating from the very walls, as if the structure itself was waking from a long slumber. "Mom!" Liam's voice broke, filled with a rising panic. "Shh!" she hissed, placing a finger to her lips. The pull of the darkness outside was still palpable, a siren's call prickling at her skin. She could almost hear the laughter of those in the shadows, an ugly mockery spiraling around them. "Where do we go now?" He clutched her hand tightly. The strength of his fear fueled her resolve. "Up to your room. Lock the door." She ushered him forward, heart pounding against her ribs. The hallway stretched long ahead, dark corners creeping into sight, making her hesitate. Each step echoed, a reminder that every action bred consequences. The walls whispered secrets she knew she wasn't meant to hear. She could feel eyes watching, lurking beneath the floorboards, hidden in the attic. She turned to grab Liam's hand again, but he stood frozen by a shadow cast by a flickering light from the kitchen. "What's that?" he asked, pointing. Emma's stomach churned. The kitchen door hung ajar, breathing a sickly light that flickered sporadically. She could hear the faint sound of drip, drip, that resonated in the silence like distant laughter. "Stay close," she demanded, her courage faltering as she edged toward the door. The air felt thick, as if the house itself were holding its breath, waiting for a spectacle to unfold. Peering inside, she caught a glimpse of something glistening on the floor. Blood? No, it was too dark, too viscous. Her mind raced. What have they done? The flickering intensified, shadows stretching, warping. She turned, preparing to flee to the safety of Liam's room, but the sudden weight in the air shifted. A scream clawed at her throat as she spun back. Liam stood now in the kitchen doorway, mesmerized, as the light blasted forth, revealing a mass of shapes, twisting and writhing within the shadows. They seemed to pulse with desperation, clawing at the threshold. "Mom, help!" Liam screamed. Emma's heart dropped, the room dimmed, and darkness rushed over her. Suddenly, the house groaned, light flickering wildly, as if responding to an unseen presence. The front door slammed open with a thunderous crash. And then, like the oncoming tide, the figures surged forward, rushing into the home, hungry for chaos and drenched in despair. "Run!" Emma screamed, her voice nearly lost in the howling of the wind. But the door to Liam's room was still open, and something was waiting beyond it. Shadowed whispers soaked in dread called out to them. Where would they find refuge? "Stay close." She pulled Liam against her, adrenaline pushing her feet forward, but whatever lurked for them was merely a heartbeat away. As they raced against time, what awaited was far worse than they dared to imagine. What had been set free? The kitchen light dimmed and finally shattered, sending shards of glass flying like winter's chill against their skin. Emma could barely hold on to her sanity. And then, from the shattered remains of light, a low chuckle echoed, cold and cruel. "Did you really think you could escape?" Emma felt the weight of darkness pressing down around them, suffocating. The moment felt stretched, each second a fragile thread ready to snap. She pulled Liam in closer, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The coldness of the air prickled against her skin, sending shivers racing down her spine. "Come on," she whispered, breaking the spell of their horror. They darted away from the kitchen, forcing themselves past the grasping shadows. A sharp tug of despair gripped her heart when she realized the front door had flung open behind them. Her thoughts raced. They were exposed. They needed to find somewhere safe, anywhere that could shield them from the encroaching darkness. The staircase loomed ahead, casting eerie shadows that beckoned her like a gaping mouth. "Upstairs now," Emma urged, yanking Liam closer as they ascended, each creak of the wooden steps echoing like distant thunder. When they reached the landing, she turned to check behind, a fleeting glance over her shoulder. The hallway was now a menacing corridor, shadows swirling, forming shapes that were decidedly wrong. She wished she hadn't looked. No more peeking. "Mom, what's happening?" Liam whimpered, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, sweetheart. Just keep moving." Emma steeled herself, forcing down the panic clawing at her throat. They hurried into Liam's room, almost collapsing against the door as she slammed it shut, the sound reverberating like a gunshot through her chest. Breathing heavily, Emma clicked the lock into place, her heart thundering in her ears. "Stay by me," she ordered. She moved quickly, pulling the curtains tight to block any prying eyes from the outside. It felt necessary, protective. Then she froze. It was too quiet. The screams and chaos outside had dulled to an unsettling stillness, a vacuum of sound that made the hairs on her arms stand straight. "Mom," Liam whispered, his voice barely audible. "I can't hear anything." "Shh," she hissed, pressing a finger to her lips. They stood in the dim light, listening. The silence was interrupted by a thump, followed by a scratching sound, soft, slow, deliberate. Emma turned slowly toward the closet. No, her breath hitched in her throat. Not there. But whatever was lurking inside began to shake the door. The wood rattled as if something beyond was fighting to get through. Emma clutched Liam's hand tighter, her knuckles white. "Should we run?" he asked, trembling. "We can't go back. We can't." She swallowed hard, the air thick with dread. Clenching her jaw, Emma remembered the family photo on the dresser, their last happy moment. "Breathe," she told herself. But the warmth of nostalgia only deepened her terror. The scratching grew more frantic, claws dragging violently. "Mom!" Liam cried, eyes wide with terror. "Don't look!" Emma yelled, but he was already staring, paralyzed not by fear, but by a morbid curiosity. In that moment, she realized Liam might not be ready for what was about to break free. She needed to act. "Liam, we have to barricade the door!" But before they could react, the closet door exploded open, splintering wood spraying across the floor. A shadow stormed forth, a mass of limbs twisting in unnatural ways, eyes glowing like dying embers in an inferno. "Run!" Emma screamed, but the words were lost in the chaos as she propelled her son towards the window. They needed to escape, and fast. "What about the door?" Liam yelled, fear gripping his voice. "The window! Climb out now!" Without a second thought, she forced him toward the opening. The figures in the room writhed, drawing closer, eager for their torment. The unmistakable scent of decay filled the air, and Emma's stomach turned. "Jump!" she urged, as the thrumming heartbeat outside started to swell, echoing louder and louder, drowning out their pleas. But they weren't going to leap into safety. What lay waiting outside was just as terrifying. "What's down there?" Liam whispered. Emma glanced out the window, her heart plummeting. The yard was crawling with shadows, crawling shapes twisted and contorted, their eyes aglow with a hunger that chilled her to the bone. "We may not have a choice," she said, terror anchoring her voice. Then more scratching, louder now, rising from the very air around them, pooling like a thick fog. The very shadows began to converge. "Mom!" Liam cried, pulling her back, his breath ragged. As reality crashed down and darkness closed in, all she could do was open her mouth to scream. Who had broken free? What horrors awaited them outside? The door splintered, and inside the chaos, something sinister stirred. The battle for survival had just begun. Emma's scream was ripped from her throat too late as shadows lunged toward them. She yanked Liam sideways, feeling his small body tremble, a flicker of panic igniting in his eyes. There was no time to hesitate. The darkness was relentless. "Liam, the window!" she shouted, her voice shaking. The boy's terror had transformed into survival instinct, and they rushed toward the opening like two ships about to sink into a storm. The moment was chaos. As Emma hoisted Liam up onto the sill, the dark figures twisted closer. She could sense their hunger, an invisible wave of malevolence crashing against her spine. She could almost hear them whisper, beckoning her to join them. "Mom, please," Liam squeaked, already dangling his feet outside. Emma shoved him through the window, praying he wouldn't fall, as a new panic took over. She glanced behind them, and the sight made her stomach churn. The shadows surged like a tide, shifting and writhing, eager to devour. "Go, go," she urged, pushing herself out just after him. The sharp air kissed her face, her heart racing with every breath. They landed hard onto the ground, the chill of the night seeping through Emma's skin. She rolled onto her side, quickly scanning the yard. Shadows danced across the lawn like ghosts, eyes glinting in the moonlight. The air smelled of rot, a stench too familiar. "Where do we go?" Liam gasped, looking frantically at the looming trees at the edge of their yard. "Over there," Emma pointed toward the nearby shed. It stood like a forgotten sentinel, roof barely visible through the veil of darkness. "We can hide in there, just for a moment." They sprinted, fear propelling them forward, a primal instinct to survive. Emma felt the weight of something watching them, felt it threading through the air, curling around her like an invisible hand. "Mom!" Liam cried, his foot catching on an exposed root, sending him tumbling to the ground. He let out a small cry, the noise echoing in the stillness. "Liam!" Emma hurried back, crouching beside him as she helped him up. "We've got to keep moving." But more than the shadows had taken notice. She could feel it, a pulse of dread, thick and heavy in the air like a storm about to break. They dashed toward the shed, the door creaking open just as they arrived, as if inviting them inside. It was cramped and dark, littered with forgotten tools and equipment that seemed to whisper their secrets. Emma quickly shoved Liam in first and followed, slamming the door shut with a gust of air that rattled the entire structure. They pressed against the wall, watching the door with bated breath. "Do you think it saw us?" Liam's voice trembled. "I don't know," Emma responded, her own heart racing too fast, beating like a war drum in her ears. She glanced through the dirty window. The yard was empty for now, but they weren't safe. Not yet. Just then, a knock echoed, sending shockwaves down her spine. It was faint but distinct, a slow, deliberate cadence that made her stomach twist. The sensation of eyes on them sharpened, a terror that pooled in her gut. "It's coming," she whispered to Liam, her voice barely holding together. "Where?" he asked, panicked, his eyes darting toward the door. But she didn't answer. There were no words that could fortify their fear. The knocks came again, louder, more insistent. Emma squeezed her son's hand tightly. "We need to be quiet." Then the knocking stopped. Silence enveloped them, thick as molasses. Emma glanced at Liam, his features illuminated by the faint light filtering through the window. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was breaching the fragile quiet. Suddenly, a figure passed outside. A dark silhouette, slick and elongated, blocking the moonlight for an instant. It lingered, head tilted as if searching. Emma held her breath. This presence felt wrong, like it belonged to another world. The air turned electric with dread, a sensation she couldn't ignore. "What do we do, Mom?" Liam whispered, his voice barely a thread. Just then, a shiver ran down Emma's spine, realization dawning on her. She had to decide, confront the truth or hide away. "Stay close," she murmured. Barely able to articulate her thoughts, she would protect him. But at what cost? Before she could think, the door splintered inward. Joists cracked like brittle bone. The darkness was coming for them, and the worst was yet to come. What truth lay just beyond that door, and would they have the courage to face it? The door flew open, splinters scattering like shattered glass. Emma stumbled back, clutching Liam tightly as dread consumed her. A chaotic whirlwind of shadow poured into the shed, swirling with a malevolent hunger. She could see them now, dark shapes with empty voids where their eyes should be, long fingers clawing through the air, seeking her and Liam. "Run!" Emma screamed, her voice breaking against the weight of fear. They darted toward the far wall, leaving behind a shadowy threat that loomed over them. Her heart pounded harder, the sound of it echoing in her ears as they pressed against the damp wood. Liam's breath was coming in sharp gasps beside her, panic etched across his small face. "Mom, what are those things?" "I don't know, but we have to get out of here." Emma could hardly think, every instinct screaming at her to escape. Her eyes darted to the small window they had just come from. If they could reach it before the shadows closed in. They turned, the walls closing in like the jaws of a predator. Emma flung herself toward the window, pulling Liam along. "Help me up first." "No, they'll get you." Liam's voice cracked, terror seeping through each word. "Trust me," Emma insisted, pushing him up to the sill. He scrambled clumsily, hands fumbling against the gritty edge. The shadows chittered, a chilling sound, like nails on a chalkboard. Emma felt the temperature drop as the figures lunged forward, their distorted features twisting in the dim light. She grabbed Liam's waist just as a hand, a slim, bony appendage, snaked out from the darkness, grazing her arm. A jolt of ice rushed through her veins, paralyzing her momentarily. The hand felt like death itself, cold and clammy. With a cry, she thrust Liam through the window. "Go, now!" Liam landed outside, a soft thud muffled by the grass. She shoved herself up and out, but the shadows surged again as she squeezed through the opening. Pain lanced through her shoulder as fingers gripped her, pulling her back. Just then, Liam's small hands grabbed hers. "Mom, pull, please!" Fueled by sheer terror and love, Emma pushed herself toward the light. Liam yanked her free, and they fell to the ground, sprawling against the chilling earth. "Run, Mom!" he yelled, fear propelling his words into a frantic plea. The shed was alive now, shadows twisting within, trying to grasp at them through the wooden frame. They didn't look back, racing toward the safety of the trees beyond their yard. Leaves crunched beneath their feet, sharp sounds echoing into the night, mingling with their heavy breaths. But once they reached the edge of the woods, something stopped them. A low growl emerged from the darkness of the trees ahead, vibrating through the ground. Not just the shadows. They were not alone. Something else was waiting. Emma turned to Liam, dread pooling in her stomach. "We can't go back. We have to face what's out there." Liam's eyes widened. "But what if it's worse?" "Every step takes us away from that shed," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clenching her heart. "We keep moving, no matter what." As they stepped deeper into the woods, the growl echoed again, this time closer, resonating with a hunger that made the ground tremble. But then a flash of light flickered in the distance, a glimmer of hope, perhaps, Or another trap. "Mom, I'm scared," Liam whispered. "Me too." Emma felt the weight of the truth, the darkness still following them. What had they unleashed back there? They pressed on, the trees closing in like a claustrophobic embrace, the air thick with dread. Shadows flickered behind them, darting between the trunks, hungry and relentless. But the light ahead was growing stronger, almost beckoning them closer. It felt like a lifeline, but was it? "Should we go toward it?" Liam hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Let's find out," Emma replied, a mix of dread and resolve coursing through her. As they moved closer to the light, the growl morphed into a chorus of whispers, weaving through the branches like a dark melody. Each step felt weighted with risk, with the knowledge that their very lives depended on the choices they made. What awaited them in the light? And could they unravel the secrets that lay entwined with their own fate? The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that twisted around them like smoke. Emma strained to make sense of the words, but they were a chaotic jumble, clouded in shadow. Heart racing, she grabbed Liam's hand tighter, urgently pulling him toward the flickering light. Whatever awaited them, it had to be better than the relentless darkness pursuing them. "Mom, Liam began, but the growl erupted again, echoing through the trees. It was closer now, a primal sound that churned Emma's stomach. She didn't have to look back to know the shadows were closing in. She could feel their presence, a cold dread creeping up her spine. Then, with each hurried step, the light grew brighter, cutting through the heavy darkness like a knife. It illuminated a small clearing, encircled by twisted trees bent in unnatural angles. The sight felt both inviting and ominous, like a siren song luring them closer to destruction. "Is it safe?" Liam said, but his voice was barely a whisper. "Stay close," Emma warned, stepping cautiously into the clearing. The ground felt different here, soft and springy, yet underlined by something sinister, a vibration she couldn't pinpoint, thrumming against her soles. Suddenly, a shuddering breath escaped her lips. At the center of the clearing stood a large stone, humming with an unsettling energy. Its surface was etched with strange symbols, glimmering faintly in the brightening light. Emma squinted, feeling drawn to it, yet knowing instinctively that this wasn't just a rock. It was something ancient, something to be feared. "Mom, what's that?" Liam asked, starlit eyes wide with curiosity and fear. "I don't know." Emma approached the stone, transfixed. But it might be important, or dangerous. As she reached out to touch it, a bone-chilling wind swept through the clearing, and the whispers intensified, swirling around her like a tempest. "Do not," they hissed. "Turn back." But Emma felt compelled to stay. "Where are you?" she called out into the darkness, her voice echoing back, unanswered. "What do you want?" At that moment, the shadows materialized, stretching long fingers toward them, twisting into grotesque forms. They danced along the edges of the light, ever watching, as if expecting them to make a wrong move. Liam clutched her leg, trembling. "What do we do?" he whimpered. Nothing," Emma stammered, trying to hold her ground. The light flickered, casting eerie shadows that twisted like serpents. The growl returned, deeper now, rumbling from within the woods. "We need to think." She could sense movement at the periphery, something bigger, something watching from the dark. The whispers fused with the growl, forming a symphony of dread that surged in her chest. They urged her to flee, but the stone beckoned, as if it held the answers to their plight. "Don't touch it!" Liam shouted suddenly, pulling her back. "Please, Mom!" But Emma was frozen, torn between impulse and fear. Before she could react, the shadows lunged, and she was thrust backward. A sharp pain shot through her as she lost her balance, falling away from the stone. The light dimmed, flickering dangerously, and the growl erupted into a roar that threatened to swallow them whole. "Run!" she cried, shaking herself from shock. They turned, bolting deeper into the trees, leaving the stone, and whatever dark power it held, behind. The shadows surged, their whispers becoming frantic. "What's happening?" Liam cried as they stumbled over roots and rocks. "I don't know. Just keep moving." Emma felt the shadows chasing them, hot on their trail. Every step away from the stone felt like a step back into safety, but the growl followed, echoing with more fury. Just when it seemed they had escaped the worst of it, a blinding flash lit up the ground ahead. More light, more whispers, pulsing with an energy that both terrified and drew them in. There, standing in a haze of brightness, appeared a figure, cloaked in mystery. Was it angelic or demonic? Hope or despair? "Surely you don't wish to run from your destiny," it spoke, voice smooth, yet laced with malice. Frozen, Emma and Liam stood at the edge of the light, hearts pounding. What would happen if they approached? Could this be their salvation, or another trap? The shadows surged forward, their forms twisting and undulating. What was happening to them? And could they trust this new entity? Or were they about to walk right into the jaws of darkness? Emma's breath hitched in her throat as the figure in the light seemed to solidify, a human shape with a shimmer that distorted just enough to chill her. It was tall, unnaturally so, with arms that seemed to stretch farther than natural proportions allowed. The face was obscured by a glimmering veil, shifting and pulsating as if it had a life of its own. "Come closer," it commanded, the tone beckoning yet sinister, wrapping around her like a fog. Emma hesitated, her instincts screaming that stepping forward might be a fatal mistake. "Mom, please," Liam whispered, tugging at her sleeve. His voice trembled, a thin strand of fear connecting her to the reality they faced. "Do you hear the whispers?" The figure continued, voice smooth as silk, but edged with sharpness. "They want you to fear, but I can offer you guidance if you choose to obey." Suddenly, the shadows crested like waves, clawing toward them, desperate for a taste of their fear. Emma felt Liam shiver beside her, the palpable dread wrapping around them tighter than any blanket. "Remember the stone," she whispered to herself, recalling the violent energy radiating from it. What did it mean? "Stay away from it," Liam urged, eyes wide and glistening with tears. Emma nodded, but felt an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that made her stomach churn. The figure stepped forward, entering the edge of the shadows. It grinned, teeth gleaming impossibly bright. "Ah, yes, the stone is but a fragment of what you seek. Your fears are what bind you. Would you rather embrace them or let me guide you to your true path?" "Don't listen! It's tricking you!" Liam yelled, his voice raw with desperation. The shadows shifted again, a menacing growl vibrating through the ground. Emma felt the weight of their stare, 1,000 unseen eyes watching her every decision. She clenched Liam's hand tighter, her heart racing, battling the seductive allure of the figure. "Choose wisely," the figure said, its voice dropping to a chilling whisper. "Embrace your fear, or watch those you love suffer the consequences." In that moment, everything froze. Emma's mind raced, memories of warmth, laughter, and safety flashing before her eyes, fighting with images of darkness, terror, and despair. The air was electric, and time seemed to stretch, warping into an unbearable silence. "Mom," Liam said again, breaking the spell. "We can't trust it. We have to leave." But Emma was caught in a web of uncertainty. What if this was a chance to understand what was happening? What if this entity could provide the answers she desperately needed? The darkness loomed behind them, and every second felt like a countdown to something that could consume them. The shadows lunged again, and the figure in the light raised an arm. "You can join me now, or perish in anguish. Time is not on your side." Emma's mind swirled as she calmed herself, glancing at Liam. She had to protect him above all else. But what choice could she make that would guarantee their safety? "Run!" she shouted suddenly, breaking from her paralysis and pulling Liam away from the light, away from the enticing figure. They turned to flee into the trees once more, the echoes of the growl roaring behind them. Yet even as they ran, Emma felt the weight of the figure's eyes burning into her back, an unrelenting reminder that destiny was not so easily discarded. "Mom, where are we going?" Liam gasped, breathless and scared. "I don't know," Emma replied, panic clawing at her throat. Footfalls thundered behind them as the shadows surged, the whispers morphing into screams. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Emma's leg as she stumbled, locking up in horror. An unseen force gripped her, pulling her back into the oppressive blackness. Liam screamed, his voice mingling with the shadows, but Emma couldn't turn back. What if the darkness had finally claimed her? What horrors awaited them behind? "Mom!" Liam cried again, but it was drowned out by a deafening roar, shaking her very core. Close behind them, a monstrous shape emerged from the blur of branches. "Run!" she screamed, forcing herself forward, not looking back at the chaos trailing them. They couldn't afford to stop now. As hope dwindled in the distance, the figure's voice echoed off the trees, taunting, "Your choice will come back around. Just wait." Each step felt heavier as dread clung to them. Would they ever escape, or would the shadows swallow them whole? What lay ahead in the suffocating void? Emma's heart pounded with urgency, knowing they didn't have much time. Branches whipped against Emma's face as she stumbled deeper into the thicket. The night swallowed their desperate cries, and the shadows behind them churned like a storm, each growl shaking the ground beneath her feet. She could feel the presence gaining on them, the darkness wrapping tighter around her limbs, holding her back. "Keep running, Liam," she shouted, her voice hoarse and urgent. "Mom, wait!" he gasped, his small voice cracking with fear. With each step, Emma's thoughts twisted into frantic knots. What if the figure had planted something in her mind, something insidious? Doubts gnawed at her like rats in the dark. She didn't want to be weak. She didn't want to give in. Liam tugged on her hand. "I can't keep going." "Just a little further," she urged, looking over her shoulder. The figure had not followed them into the trees, but ominous whispers echoed in her ears, a sickening reminder of the threat lurking behind. They were not safe yet. Suddenly, the ground dropped away beneath them. Emma felt her stomach lurch as she clutched Liam tighter, their frame tumbling down a steep slope and coming to an abrupt stop in a small clearing, surrounded by thick fog. The air was suffocating, heavy with the scent of earth and decay. "Are you okay?" she asked, pushing away strands of hair from her face. Liam's eyes were wide, reflecting both confusion and fear. "What now?" he said breathlessly. As if in answer, there came a creaking sound, low and foreboding. A weathered door stood tall amid the underbrush, its once white paint chipped and blackened, the number 7 barely discernible through layers of grime. It had no business being here, so out of place in the wild chaos surrounding them. She approached it against every instinct in her body, drawn to it as though it were a flame flickering in the depth of night. "Mom, no," Liam whispered, his grip tightening on her arm. Emma hesitated, torn. The stories her father told her of the woods flooded back. Doors in places they didn't belong, portals to places unknown, but they came with terrible costs. And yet this door seemed to pulse with a life of its own, reality bending around it. "Listen, we can't," she started, but then the whispers returned, swirling like fog around her thoughts again. "Open it. Find the truth." The whispers dripped seduction, drowning out her rational mind. She turned to Liam, seeing the terror etched across his face, and the shadows creeping ever closer at the edge of the clearing, ever more restless, gripping her with icy fingers. "Mom," he pleaded, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She took a deep breath, fighting against the lure of the door. "Okay, let's get out of here." But just as she turned to run, a hand, cold and spectral, gripped her ankle. She screamed, stumbling backward, a flash of panic surging through her veins. The figure from the clearing loomed in the fog, as if it had stepped through some unseen veil. "You cannot escape your fate," it hissed, each word darkening the air. Emma scrambled, pulling Liam closer, but the presence encircled them, devouring light and hope. "Open the door, or face what comes next." The figure beckoned with a crooked finger, a grin stretching unnaturally. Sky turned darker, clouds gathering with a roar. A thunderous crack echoed, and Emma realized they had to make a choice, and fast. What lay behind that door? Was it salvation or doom? "Liam, hold my hand tight," she shouted, feeling drawn to the door again, uncertainty clawing at her. Her heart raced, and she needed to decide. Face the figure or take a chance on the unknown? What if she chose wrong? With the shadows encroaching ever closer, Emma realized their time was running out. "What are we going to do?" Liam asked, his voice breaking again. "Whatever it takes," she exclaimed, readying herself for either answer. But even so, fear wrapped around her like a vice. The real question loomed. Was it better to confront the truth, or shut the door on what could be a terrifying revelation? Suddenly, a screech ripped through the air, and the ground trembled beneath them. Emma braced herself as she prepared to face the unknown. Would they step forward into darkness, or turn back into terror? Their fate lay on the edge of that door, and the shadows were closing in fast. The door creaked open with an agonizing slowness, revealing a darkness that throbbed with ominous energy. Emma felt a rush of cold air pull her inside like a magnet, but she held her ground, clutching Liam's hand as he whimpered in fear beside her. Whatever waited beyond would demand answers, and she refused to bow down to that darkness without a fight. No, Mom, we can't go in." Liam's voice was desperate, trembling with the weight of a child's fear. "Listen, sweetie, we can't afford to hide anymore. We have to know." Emma pulled him closer, trusting the bond of mother and son to guide them. Heart racing, she stepped fully through the threshold, dragging Liam along with her. The moment they crossed into the abyss, the door slammed shut behind them, plunging them into oppressive darkness. The air was thick, suffocating, as whispers pulsed around them, swirling like a tempest. But unlike the whispers in the woods, these carried a hint of familiarity. A voice she barely recognized was calling to her. "Emma, Liam." Her heart raced with recognition. "Dad?" "Emma," his voice echoed through the chamber, both soothing and haunting. "You must find the truth before it's too late." Suddenly, flickers of light erupted around them, casting ghostly shapes against the walls. Each image seemed to pulse with a heartbeat, memories of love and sorrow mingling together, forming a tapestry of the past. She saw flashes of laughter, moments spilled from a life long gone, but every joyous memory dripped with an underlying dread. "Mom, I don't like this," Liam cried, tugging at her sleeve. "Shh, it's okay. It's just memories." She knelt down, looking into his wide, frightened eyes. "Focus on me, Liam. We can get through this together." As they moved deeper into the room, the shadows began to take shape, coalescing around them. Figures emerged, twisted, fragmented representations of the things they feared. Each face resembled someone Emma had known, long-lost friends and neighbors, their eyes empty but filled with accusation. "You brought this upon us," they whispered, their voices layered with betrayal. "You ignored our warnings. You cannot escape the truth." Liam clutched Emma's hand tighter, terror radiating from his small body. She felt her own panic rising. How could they fight against ghosts of the past, shadows of blame? "Get out! We have to leave!" Liam cried, pulling her backward. "No," Emma said, firm and resolute. "We need to understand what happened. This is the only way to truly be free." With each step they took, the chamber pulsed, as if responding to their fear and courage. The colors of light brightened, illuminating a central pedestal where an object of glowing essence sat, a small gem-like stone inscribed with familiar symbols. Emma's heart raced. "Liam," she breathed, inching closer to it. "This is what they were protective of. This is what they were watching for." "Mom, don't touch it!" Liam screamed, eyes wide. But she couldn't help herself. The gem called to her, the undeniable urge to seek the truth overwhelming her reason. As her fingers grazed the surface, the room exploded with images, laughter and darkness spiraling out from the gem in a swirling vortex. Emma gasped as truth washed over her, visions of the past unleashed, showing the legacy of fear, how the darkness crept into lives and families, feeding on doubt and desperation. A final image struck her, a young boy, laughing, running away from shadows that loomed larger with each passing moment. Fear turned into a nightmare, the shadows wrapping tighter, swallowing the boy whole. It was the moment she realized they bore the weight of their own fear. "In facing this, we free ourselves," Emma murmured, the pieces falling into place. "Mom, please!" Liam trembled against her leg, the terror in his voice sharp. With renewed resolve, Emma stood tall. "This ends now!" She pressed her palm firmly against the gem, feeling warmth radiate through her fingertips. The memories erupted, clearing the darkness in a blinding flash of light. "Fear is not our master!" Emma shouted into the void, her voice igniting a spark of hope against the shadows. "We will not give it power!" Suddenly, the shadows began retreating, swirling backwards like waves pulled away from the shore, disintegrating into fragments of dust. The voices faded, and the light grew, illuminating their path toward freedom. "Come on, Liam, let's go," she called, and together they emerged from the remnants of darkness, bursting through to find themselves standing in the clearing once more, light flooding down from the canopy above. Breathless, they collapsed onto the ground, hearts pounding from the terrifying descent into their own fears. The shadows that had once pursued them were gone, dissipating into the night air. "It's over," she whispered, pulling Liam into her arms. "It's really over?" he asked, face buried in her shoulder. "Yes," she reassured him, savoring the relief flooding her heart. "We faced it together, and now we're free." With that, Emma embraced the warmth of a new dawn unfolding over Maplewood, the sun's bright rays piercing through the horizon, painting a realm reborn. They had found their refuge, and the burdens of the past lifted from their shoulders. Though scars would remain, Emma held on to the truth that light can always prevail over darkness as long as they had each other, bound by an unbreakable love. And as they walked home hand in hand, the world felt like a safer place once more. Shadows lingered, but they no longer held the power to haunt. Now, listen closely. This is the moment to show your support. If you're enjoying this thrilling journey, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. And remember, flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what we just witnessed. Don't wait even one more second to share this video.